Hey guys, welcome back to another wonderful edition of the Duke of Alex Misremembers Movies. Today we have a special Friday night double feature. I think today's Friday. I got a haircut. Check that out. It's very, very short. I think it looks good. I think today's Friday. I'm coming off a final exam for law school, and it was very intense. So I'm very happy to be on that, and looking forward to the next one, the last one, then the Christmas season. Between you and me, I got a PS5, but I can't touch it because it's under the tree. But I got the Metaphor game from the new Atlas title. It's gonna be great. So our movies tonight are Abigail and the Autopsy of Jane Doe. We're gonna do a double feature back to back. I'm gonna take you through Abigail, then I'm gonna take you through Jane Doe. Just we'll see how I do. I hope I can remember everyone's names. So Abigail opens as a young girl is dancing ballerina style on stage. It's a pretty great dance routine. I don't know much about ballet, but it looks pretty. But you see glances that the entire auditorium is empty. Then we are intercut with a woman who's like eating candy that's white and also has some needles, and it's crazy. And she gets picked up by a van, and the van's driven by a guy that we will call Don Rickles. So they go to a mansion. There's like a woman on a keyboard, and she hacks the system, and she's like, okay, we're in. And the young girl finishes her performance and is led to a waiting black SUV and is driven home to the mansion, the same mansion that the lady was hacking into previously. Then they essentially kidnap the young girl using the drugs to knock her out. That seems like a lot of drugs to knock out a seemingly 12-year-old child. But I do believe she is still in her ballerina outfit. Yeah, she remains in the ballerina outfit pretty much the whole movie. And we're going to get to the point where things go off the rails, and then you can decide whether or not you'd like to stick around for the rest of the explanation. So we have an introduction to our main cast. They come into the house. The girl is taken to a separate room and is, I do believe, chained up and blindfolded. And then a man explains the MacGuffin of the movie, which is the fact that they will all get paid once her father pays him $50 million, and all they have to do is babysit the girl. Our main cast is the one individual who is going to interact with the girl, whose name is Joey. Joey was the individual with the needles, also is addicted to candy, and it's inferred that's not all Joey's addicted to. Joey has a talent, and the talent is to see people's tells and signs, and Joey's going to utilize this talent to kind of all the rest of the people make a little bit extra change. So we have Joey. We'll call Joey Final Girl. We got Final Girl. We got Paul, who is the muscle. Paul is an extremely muscular guy. Also bald, also sort of the comedy relief. I like Paul. We have Sammy. Sammy is the hacker girl from earlier, blonde hair. I don't know the color of her eyes. I can assume they're blue eyes. Joey says she's very wealthy, and she is from a wealthy family, but she likes hacking and likes the criminal side of things. Then we have the getaway driver, whose name is Don Rickles. That's just what they call him, so I'm going to call him Don. And he's kind of a very cool ex-military, perhaps, individual who's just calm and collected, and seemingly like the hero of the story. Then we have the head of this little group, who isn't the leader. The leader's Lambert, and he's the guy who told them that they're all going to get paid once he gets paid. Played by the dude who played Gustavo in Breaking Bad. Also, I guess he's a Sith Lord in the Star Wars universe, or aspires to be one, but maybe he died? I don't know. He has a lightsaber at some point in his career. So that's all I know about him. Spoilers, I guess, for that Star Wars stuff. My bad. So anyway, the Don Rickles, driver, potentially ex-military. Then we have Frank, who is a detective, ex-detective, and is very police oriented, just has that vibe around him, but also likes to be in control. That's brought up a few times, and he specifically tells Joey, "Don't mess with me." And then we have, last but not least, actually, yes, least, sorry. It's the dude who's like, man, I just don't know, man. Man, I hope they have some whatever, man. Man, I just. And she says, Semper Fi, did I, that's enough said, and you're getting off easy whenever it comes to actually showing his past. This particular actor who acts in roles of a deadbeat drug addict, drug dealer, but also kind of cool and I guess successful. Like, how did this guy make it to the crew? I can see why Sammy's here. I can see why Paul's here. I can see why Frank's here. I don't know why Joey's here. Joey's a very odd one out, and so is this guy, because both of those individuals are extraordinarily problematic. Him, because he seems like an addict, no matter what he says, and Joey, because I think she might legitimately be an active addict. She has this situation with candy. She constantly is putting white lollipops in her mouth, and they say that they're white lollipops. Where I come from, a white lollipop is something that people would mix, heavy substances with sugar and make their own white lollipops. So it's like, is she still doing? I don't know what's going on. This whole movie's insane. And it gets insane because she goes in, she sees the little girl. The little girl's complaining about her handcuffs, so Joey moves the handcuffs around front. The little girl's complaining about her blindfold, so Joey takes the blindfold off. Joey puts on her mask, though. Now, the little girl says, "I'm sorry for what's going to happen to you." And then she tells him who her father is. Joey leaves and goes straight over to Frank and is like, "Do you know anything about her father?" And Frank's like, "No, I don't know anything about her father." "You don't know anything about her father." She goes, "Her father's Joe Calagione." And Frank's like, "What? That guy? Oh man, that's bad news." So then Frank goes in there to talk to her, and Frank opens the door, and of course she has her blindfold off. So then Frank freaks out. "Oh, did you see my eyes? What color are my eyes?" He keeps asking her this, and she's like, she lies to him and says she didn't see his eyes and pretends to be scared and whatnot. We're going to fast forward along because there's a scene where Frank goes to leave and then they convince him to stay, and he's like, "We all need to get out of here as one, because if we stay here, he's going to send Vasquez to kill us." Now, Vasquez is not the bodyguard from Big City Greens, although that's what I think about when I hear Vasquez. But he's kind of like that bodyguard because he tears people apart with his bare hands. So a little bit later on, we have everyone has agreed now that they're going to stick it out. They're going to get paid their millions, and then they're going to disappear into the wind. They're going to go away like smoke. And they all understand they have to do this because they've now pissed off an extraordinarily powerful individual. So Sammy goes to her room and sits down on her couch and starts watching TV when suddenly a man in a mask behind her flips a lighter and turns it on and starts smoking a cigarette, and Sammy freaks out. And it turns out the man behind her is the deadbeat lookout Semper Fi guy, who is the drug fueled individual. Now, in real life, this actor will pass away at a young age, which is sad, from an overdose of cocaine, fentanyl, ketamine, and I think methamphetamines. Oh, no, cocaine. Cocaine was the fourth one. So it was so it's cocaine, ketamine. What did I say? Cocaine, ketamine. I think it's meth and butol, something like that. Antidepressants, essentially. The guy OD'd, but he didn't just OD on one thing. Like, he went hard, and it's terrible when that occurs, and it is sad. And he obviously has he had demons, and he had addictions, and anyone who heard him speak could have told you he was addicted to something. And there's person out there right now, like, man, what are you talking about, man? I don't know, man. What you mean right there, man, about that? And it's like, I'm sorry, dude. Like, I hear you speak, and I say to myself, this guy's probably addicted to something, because that's just the way that sounds to me. Which he was cast in quite a few roles where he abuses drugs or alcohol or other substances. Now, in this case, he's not the alcoholic. Paul, the muscular guy, is the alcoholic. So Paul has drunk himself into a stupor. Now, this guy shows up in Sammy's room, and he scares Sammy, but he just wanted to make her laugh, and he's kind of hitting on her a bit because they were, chatting in the vehicle at some point, and the long and the short of it is she kicks him out of the room because, he was a total dick and scared her. So he goes to check out the kitchen. So he opens the fridge door. And I know he doesn't deserve to die for this. I understand it. But as a guy who pays his own electrical bill now, okay, I'll just tell you what happens. Make up your own mind on it. He leaves the fridge door open and walks away from the fridge. And every step he took was like someone was kneeing me in my heart. I mean, it just, you're gonna leave that open? No, you don't. You have no idea. You have no idea what the power bill is going to be. Every second you leave that door open, you are losing fridge efficiency. And that's all I could think about, right up until bad things happen. So he gets and snatched down, and you don't see what happens, but he screams. And now, the only person who hears the scream in the whole house is Sammy. And Sammy's like, that's the scream of the man who just tried to scare me. And so Sammy goes, I don't know why I did that voice just there. That's my Sammy voice, and that's the voice that we're going to do for Sammy. So she goes to check on him. Sammy has a great part to play later. And while she's down there, she kind of goes to that darker area that he was attracted to because he heard that sound. Except then, a sound behind her, so she turns around. Oh, he's sitting at the table she just walked by. This guy's a jerk. So she's like, oh, you scared me. And she walks up and she touches his shoulder, and his head just falls off. Cue screams. Now's the time that if you are intrigued by this at all, and I'll tell you this, it's got a very cool scene involving Sammy later on. I liked it. But if you're at all intrigued, please go check it out yourself. If you'd like to stick around and finish listening to this wonderful double feature, by all means. So, let's get into it. Everybody else shows up down there because the guy's beheaded. And this is a serious, serious situation. So then they go to leave. And they find the doors locked. They find everything barred. They are now trapped inside the house. They go and they confront the little girl. And I don't remember exactly how she gets out of her handcuffs. I think she just takes them off. And they're all looking at her, and she's like, okay, let me do this rundown. You, Sammy, hacked into the wrong account. And we know your name's actually like Jesse, but I'm going to keep calling Sammy Sammy because that's the name I know Sammy by. Then she goes, you, Michael, you, Frank, were a detective, and you flipped on 3 high-ranking members of my, father's drug empire. You, Paul, the muscle guy, you forget Paul's there a lot of the time, but he's great. He's just a really great character. You, Paul, are a muscle for a Quebec gang. You don't think Canada has gangs, but I guess they do have gangs. But do they say sorry once they break your knees? Let me know in the comments down below, Scott. So you, Quebec muscle guy, you didn't do the job right. Now you're on the lam, and that's why we want you. And you, Joey, are. She was supposed to get a bullet out of somebody, and she nicked an artery, and the person died. And it's like that's kind of the risk you take getting shot. I don't call me nutso crazy over here, but you're doing back alley medicine. I mean, come on, you're gonna nick an artery every now and again. It's like, okay, I'll fix the next one for free. I'm sorry about that, guys. So we have the reason and then Don Rickles. Literally no idea why Don Rickles is there. He's just called Don Rickles. He's the driver. Okay. So after she confronts them all and everything, everybody goes their separate ways because they're just supposed to survive. Uh, she attacks them, and she gets free, and so she's gone, or she's in the room, okay, and everybody else has left, and so they're all having this meeting downstairs, and they're like, you know, she's a vampire, and they're like, what? Because she had long teeth and she attacked them and it was crazy. And Frank goes, she's a vampire, what do we know about vampires? And they're like, this is insane. And he's like, no, this is what's happening. What do we know about vampires? They don't like garlic, they don't like flipping crosses, they don't like stakes through the heart, they don't like sunlight. So they're going down this list, and he says, he points at Sammy and he goes, go to the kitchen, get some garlic. So Sammy runs off, I'll get some garlic. And she runs off and she brings back, I got garlic. And it's a bag of onions, which is phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal. Goes very well with Sammy's character. Sammy's a really good character because actually nuanced. It was well done. I think Paul's a good character. He's nuanced as well. He is a little bit on the slower side of things. He's not the brightest bulb in the box, you could say, but he has a crucifix on and he's very muscular. And then you have, that is literally his only claim to fame character trait. He's got a lot of muscle. And at some point, Semper Fi guy drew a penis on his face, so he's got that too. So then Frank says, Frank goes, gets the onions, gets the garlic, they have the onions. And he says, okay, now we've got garlic, we've got steaks, we're going to go in there and we've got a crucifix, we're going to go kill the vampire. And Joey and Don Rickles are like, no, we're not going to go kill the vampire. That's a very stupid idea. And so they go to kill the vampire. And once they enter the room, you see that the room is empty. They're shocked. Where did Abigail go? By the way, the vampire's name, the little girl, her name's Abigail. That's why the movie's called Abigail. I'm sorry I didn't mention that before. So there's a hole in the ceiling. Then they hear music. Cut to them upstairs. She's dancing on the platform with Semper Fi's body, headless body. She's just dancing with his body. Just slow dancing, dragging the corpse around. Very well done. Very good scene. I liked it. This vampire movie, it's bringing something to the table. It truly is. It's something unique. It's something interesting. I'm down for that. So they're going to attack her. Instead, she just completely tears them apart. She puts a stake through Frank's leg. She stabs poor Paul multiple times with his crucifix. She smacks the garlic out of Sammy's hand and bites Sammy's arm. Now we're going to cut to Joey and Don Rickles kind of following up with them. And Don Rickles basically tells her, look, we're the only two that are going to be able to get out of this. Okay? We're the only two that we can trust. We're both ex-military, I guess. I don't know why Don Rickles is ex-military, but Joey was, she was an army medic, and then she started shooting up the morphine because of what she experienced over there, and she became addicted, and that led to her being dishonorably discharged, and now she's eating the candy to try to wean herself off of heroin or morphine withdrawal. So she's got demons. She goes, okay, and he goes, okay. And then they both have this moment where I called it the Gen Z kiss, where they each like do their guns, but they do them like off to the side and all slick, and then they turn away from each other and they walk down opposite hallways. And then Joey, who's all the way down here, hears a noise and turns around and is like, Don Rickles? And Don has his back to Joey, and Joey's like, Don? Da-da-da-da-da-da-da. Don? And then he turns around and his face is all torn up and he's got chunks missing out of his chest, and Don Rickles, the finger is, and then he dies. And it was like, oh my God, what just happened to Don Rickles? Well, then she goes back downstairs. Frank, Paul, and Sammy wander in because they've just had their asses handed to them, and obviously Abigail is loose in the house. So then we have this situation where the only people left, I found this cap and I'm playing with it while I talk to you guys. I apologize. I'll put it down now. The only people left are Sammy, Joey, Paul, and Frankie. and they have to kind of figure out what to do next. At this point, the movie becomes foggy, so we're going to fast forward ever so slightly to they're now in the library, and it's daylight. The daylight streams in, and it damages Abigail whenever she runs at them. I don't think I missed too much. I think they were just trying to get out many other different ways, and they just came to the conclusion there's no way out of the house. And so they escape to the library. Now, in the library, there's this big circular window and it's letting in sunlight. The cool thing is, this movie is now, we've gone an entire night. We're now in the day cycle, which is cool because we might eventually get back to night. And that's exactly what Joey says as she's trying to carve a hole through the wall. Is she's trying to make it outside. Now, Sam is afraid because Sam thinks she's going to turn into a vampire until she puts her hand in the sunlight and realizes she's not a vampire. Phenomenal. So Joey gives up on carving a hole through the wall, and they're all kind of standing there, and Sammy says, I just wish I could reset it. And then everything clicks. And she tells them, I just need to go. I'm going to drop the Sammy voice. I'm sorry. I just need to go. I need to reset the power in the house, and that'll reset the security system, and we can exit while that's happening. So all of a sudden, they just need to find the breaker box. They decide, no, I've got that thing again. I just can't. I can't not have something to mess with. It's a little cap for like a Bath and Body Works thing, I think. So they go to find the breaker box, and while they're looking for the breaker box, they kind of split up, and you just don't ever want to do that. So we have, on the one part, we have Sammy and we have Paul. Now, they have locked Abigail in an elevator. And this is right before she gets burned by the sunshine. Because they actually ejected her with the needle. That's the thing I forgot. I said it got foggy. We're going to roll back to right before they got into the library with the sunshine, okay? So I know. First time in Movies MisRemembered history. We're covering something I didn't cover previously. So we go back and they successfully knock her out with the knockout medicine. And then they decide, instead of, at that point in time, ending the vampire with a stake through its heart, which would have ended the movie, I understand. But it's going to take a lot of suspension of disbelief to just say the person whom has torn apart people with their bare hands, you're going to just lock them in an elevator, which is what they do. They lock her in an elevator and she stays in the elevator. So that's where she is, and she offers that if Frank lets her go, she'll tell Frank how to get out. And Frank says, tell me how to get out, and then I'll let you go. And so she tells him how to get out, and it has to do with the library, which is why they go to the library. Thank you very much. I knew there was a reason. So then he's like, yeah, I'm not letting you out. And he starts to walk away, and I turn to Amy. I say, she's going to break that lock, isn't she? And then immediately, and she just opens the door and was like, yeah, she could have done that at any time. And she tears people's heads off with her bare hands. A small piece of metal is not going to, I mean, maybe big chains might, if she doesn't have the leverage to do anything, but like small piece of metal isn't going to do much against her. So that's what I missed. He runs away from her. She chases him. She gets into the sunlight. They're A-okay. So now we're fast forwarding. They're looking for the breaker box. They've split into two groups. Group A, Joey and Frank. Not a great group. Group B, Paul and Sammy. All-stars. All the way, 100%. Paul is such a nice guy. Paul's like, do you have anybody out there you care about? I have people I care about. We're going to make it back to them. Sammy, meanwhile, is hearing Abigail's voice as Abigail says stuff like, you're mine. I control your mind now. I will be the one to guide you in the darkness of the sun shadow. Whatever. So then, Sammy turns. Sammy is now a vampire. I know, it's sad. She's gonna eat Paul. She eats Paul. Paul dies. Then, in what I promised you was the cool scene, there is a cut up with rock and roll music playing, I guess, and it has Abigail dancing in a different part of the house, but because she's controlling Sammy, Sammy is dancing in this part of the house, and their choreography is phenomenal. The dance is really cool. It's really neat to see them cutting back and forth, and the whole time Sammy's kind of in a room that has a little bit of sunlight filtering in, so Sammy's just burning alive. Just a lot of burning is happening, and she's completely smoking and stuff. And then Joey and Frank show up because they got the radio report or whatever, and she's like, "Is that Paul? Oh, Sammy, it's you." Now that's Joey's voice. And Sammy turns to them and kind of has her head down and is smoking, actively smoking from her skin because she's all charred up because she was just dancing in the sunshine, having a great day. And Joey asks, is everything okay? And Sammy goes, "Everything's fine." And then Sammy attacks as Abigail, you see. So Sammy is chasing Joey and Frankie. They're running away. They run into the sunshine, and then Frank grabs a platter and turns and like bends down and does that with the platter, and it reflects the sunshine like a giant laser beam, and it blows Sammy up and blood goes everywhere. And I'm like, I didn't think that's what happened. Because a minute ago she was dancing in sunlight, and now she just gets hit with the refraction of sunlight, and it's somehow like 1,000 times more powerful or something. I don't know. They made a creative decision there, and we have to move past it. But everyone see it, rubberneck on it for a minute, talk about it down in the comments, and then let's move on. So then a door opens. It's the door that Abigail told Frankie about that was the way out, but Frankie didn't notice it in the beginning. Now, we're still got some left in this movie, so let's just speed this along. They go down the hallway. There's a security room. Frankie goes in the security room. Lambert's there. He, turns out to be a vampire and just beats the heck out of Joey, and Joey's in a crumpled heap on the floor. And then Frankie's there, and he's like, "Do you want to turn? And if I turn you, you can help me kill Abigail, and then we'll take over this Vasquez's guy's entire empire, and we'll rule as kings, and you can have whatever you want. I just want my revenge on her." And Frankie's like, "Sure." So he turns Frankie. Frankie then immediately stabs him in the back. Literally stabs, quite literally stakes him in the back. That's what you get for turning me in. And then Frankie's gonna drain Joey. So I guess they almost have a fight, but then Abigail shows up and attacks Joey, but then Joey gets the upper hand and starts draining Abigail. This is going to happen multiple times. Joey is an evil vampire guy. Abigail was an evil vampire girl, but her and Joey... Wait, did I say Joey was an evil vampire guy? I mean Frankie. Abigail and Joey shared a pinky promise earlier, and there's a scene where Frankie is draining Joey, and Joey's kind of looking over Frankie's shoulder, and then Joey does this weakly to Abigail with the pinky. And then Abigail, Joey just feels horrible. I'm getting everybody's names confused. Let's speed along to the very end. He drains Abigail what seems to be multiple times. There's one scene where he sticks Joey to the wall with a fireplace poker. Through her shoulder. That's a fireplace poker. I don't know if you've ever seen a fireplace poker. They have a sharp point, and then they have like a little thing that goes down like that, okay? I don't know if this one had one of those little weird down things, but if it did, that went through her shoulder. Then he pulls her off the fireplace poker. And it's gruesome to imagine what she has just gone through, okay? And while he's draining Abigail for like the third time, somehow Joey gets the upper hand and damages him, and then Abigail is able to drain Frankie, and Frankie dies. And then Abigail's father shows up. And he's like, "Oh, I came here to get you." And this whole time we've been seeing statues and paintings of a hooded man with a little girl. Turns out that's the man, that's the girl. And when Abigail said her father grew tired of having a daughter, she wasn't lying. So he shows up, he's like, "I showed up when you needed me." And she goes, "I almost died." "Well, but you didn't." And then he's like, "Let's drain this one." And she's like, "No, father, she was here when I needed her and you weren't." And then He kisses Joey's hand. And he says, "Okay, good day, madam. Leave, it's almost dinner time." And Joey turns and is like, "What the fuck?" And is walking away. And I'm like, she is calmly walking away with that shoulder wound. Again, we're going to rub her neck. We're going to look at it. We're going to move on because I got a second movie to get to. So she goes outside and the movie ends with her unwrapping. Oh, Abigail says, "I'll see you later, Joey." And it's like this cute little, ooh, they're leaving it open for a sequel. I don't think this movie's getting a sequel, y'all. But she goes out to the car and then she unwraps one of her white lollipops and puts it in her mouth. And either that is a Dum Dum mystery flavor, if you know, you know, or that's, like OX mixed with raw sugar melted down in a lollipop form. I don't know which it could be, but that was Abigail. I loved the dancing scenes. I loved the concept. I thought it was cool. It's like Interview with a Vampire if the little girl was still a vampire. I thought at times the young actress who played Abigail did a good job in that at times she was overacting and you could tell because she was a little girl who also happens to be a vampire, but then at times she was really acting, and it's, I don't know, I enjoyed it. It's a good popcorn film if you just need to put something on in the background. Definitely a 2 out of 3. It's not a must watch, but you're not going to waste your life if you watch it. And it, I think, was the last film for the Semper Fi. Oh, man, what you talking about, man? Guy. So that guy, he passed away shortly thereafter. He was from Euphoria as well. So, if you're feeling like you're in a bad place, there's always help out there. Someone to talk to. Let's get on to the second movie of the night. Sorry, man, that was a bummer way to end that movie. So we have the second movie of the night is The Autopsy of Jane Doe. The Autopsy of Jane Doe takes place in a small town in which the police show up. This is IFC Midnight. That's the independent film channel Midnight. So the police show up and they're taking pictures of a crime scene, and in the basement is a woman in a shallow grave. So they take the woman to the local coroner's office. The local coroner's office is a father-son team, and we learn throughout the context of the story that the coroner's office has been in their family for 3 generations now, and this young man is going to be the 4th. So he kind of, it's one of those age-old tales of feeling like you have to take over the family business or be there for it. He's learning how to spot different, crime techniques and things, and his father keeps telling him, "We don't solve the crime, but you see, check his lungs, check his nasal cavities, they have a body on the table." And he's like, "Yeah, he died from smoke inhalation." He goes, no, the nasal cavities aren't as burned, this isn't as burned, he died because," and then he clicks a flashlight and he shows it down there and he's like, "Yeah, see, he died because he fractured his body. The body fracture is what caused the death, the COD. The smoke and everything else happened afterwards." And the son says he died because no one else was there. And his father said he died because he fell down and hit his head. Message: he's afraid to leave his father alone because he's afraid that his father's going to die without him. Oh my gosh. I know, I'm finding deeper meaning in this already. So then the girlfriend shows up because the son and the girlfriend have plans for dinner. The girlfriend wants to see one of the bodies because the son always goes to visit her at her job, which is a bookstore, but she never gets to visit him at his, which is, a morgue. And he says, "You don't want to see the bodies. There's some things you can't unsee." So she decides she wants to see this body. Well, this body just so happens to be an individual who's missing the front part of his face, and that's because it was a self-inflicted gunshot wound. But then you have the added aspect that they found strychnine in his bloodstream. And so they believe that he was dead before the gunshot ever happened. And she said, "Why would somebody do that?" And he says, "It's not our job to figure out why they do it. It's just our job to say what happened." And, why they would do it is they murdered him. They murdered him. Somebody would do that because of murder, And that's a real stupid question to ask why somebody has strychnine in their system, but I'm not going to judge the girl. She just works at a bookstore, and I can only assume she has access to Agatha Christie novels. Maybe she hasn't read any. So then we have the body arrive. The son and the girlfriend were just about to leave when the sheriff rolls down with the Jane Doe body, and the one the whole movie's about, by the way, and he rolls it into the autopsy room. Now there's a radio going, and the guy on the radio says, "Oh, it's going to be another beautiful day today in Sunnyvale," and so the son says to his girlfriend, "Look, I'm going to stay and help my dad with this. Give me 2 hours. We'll go catch the midnight showing. I promise I'll make it up to you. Don't smile, because that means yes." And then she smiles, and he's like, "Okay, so that means yes." And she goes, "Maybe." And she leaves. Now, that's just it. She left. She gave him a maybe, not a guarantee. Let's remember that, okay? Because later on, it's, a maybe, not a guarantee. That maybe, that doesn't mean yes, okay? So he goes back to help his father with the corpse. They start taking samples and whatnot with the corpse, and they're finding peat under her fingernails. And he's like, "Oh, where would you get peat?" And he goes, "Well, you'd get it at the nursery, but also from up north." Now, I have a father-in-law who's from up north. Peat is such a serious part of the gardening. He has to have a bag of peat. I know what peat is because this guy has to have peat. And peat, it's really cool. I mean, it's very nutritious for plants. I like it now. But I didn't know anything about it. I'm from, LA, Lower Alabama, and Florida, so peat is a mystery to me, except for the fact that you find it at nurseries. And I was like, "Oh, cool." And so they continue digging, and an insect comes out of her nose and flies away, and that's weird. And it's never again referenced or mentioned or anything. And then they're taking out her organs, and they're finding that the organs have cut marks on them. Like, her lungs are black, almost as if she was in a horrific fire. Her heart is stabbed and nicked and cut. Her organs show scarring. Her wrists and her ankles, the joints are crushed. And the father says, "I've seen something like this before. It was with human traffickers. They bound the wrists and the ankles so tight. Her tongue has been cut out. They cut out these girls' tongues, the human traffickers did, so they couldn't talk to anyone or report on anything." So they're kind of working off this assumption that maybe this is a human trafficking case. And then they find in her stomach, they find a flower that is known to cause paralysis, which is spooky. And then they find something wrapped in fabric, and what's wrapped in the fabric is a tooth, and it's her tooth from her mouth, which is crazy. So they look at the fabric, and it has letters and stuff on it, but it doesn't make any sense right now. So this whole time, outside, the weather's been getting worse and worse and worse. We hear this huge storm rolling in, and the radio starts telling us about how there's flash flood warning and how this is the storm of the century and it's going to be so terrible. Well, remember, a minute ago, it was like beautiful weather. So then the son goes, he hears something in the air vent. Whenever he looks up at it and he gets on a table, something like jumps out at him and he falls down. And when he goes back up there, he finds the cat. The poor cat has had some massive injuries done. And if you have any interest in this film whatsoever, I would suggest watching it. It's going to come in, I'll give you the rating now, a 2 out of 3 for me. It's not a must, but it definitely does things in a different way. It gives us a new flavor to the genre. I'm always okay with people taking chances and giving me something I haven't experienced yet. Do I like mustard chocolate chip cookies? No. But have I ever tried a mustard chocolate chip cookie? Also, no. And if my daughter presented me with a mustard chocolate chip cookie, pinky promise, I take a bite. I try it. I might not like it, but I'm going to eat that first bite because they took the time to put mustard on a chocolate chip cookie and bring it to me. Hey man, we're trying new things, okay? So, this is not a mustard chocolate chip cookie. This is a chocolate chip cookie, and it's good. It's 2 out of 3. So, but it's I'd almost give it a little more of a kick because it does bring something unique to the table. So we are now at the point with the cat. The father kills the cat, putting it out of its misery. I know it's a sad scene. Everybody's very sad because the cat dies. But the reality of the situation is that I don't believe this is happening. Stay with me. The cat did not like the body when they brought the body down, which is a little off brand for what we're going to uncover later on. But needless to say, spooky things start happening in the lab. We can skip a majority of the spooky things, but it's things like the bodies start walking around, specifically the one missing his face. And the father gets grabbed and dragged into a closet. And he says that whatever grabbed him had her eyes. So spooky things are occurring, and they try to light her corpse on fire because they decide that it's her that is causing the fire. Causing all the spooky stuff to happen. And they're going to cremate her, but then something else happens to stop them from cremating her. They try calling the sheriff. They can't get through to the sheriff. And the storm outside's getting worse. They try to leave the morgue area, but a sycamore tree has come down on the door leading out. And they can't quite leave. And so these things are getting in their way, almost as if they are being trapped in this underground morgue. And then they decide, because they try to catch her on fire and everything just burns, but they put it out because the fire's getting too big. And I'm like, yeah, guys, don't start a fire when you're trapped in an underground basement by a sycamore tree. That's going to eat all the oxygen. You're going to die. But they put the fire out and she's unburned. And that's when they realize this is truly something about her. So they decide they're going to finish the autopsy. But just then the elevator dings. So they're going to leave. So they run to the elevator because the power's been out. Now the power's back on. The elevator's dinging. But then the elevator's going up. So they have to wait. It comes back down. The gate opens. They get in. The gates kind of close-ish. And lo and behold, the evil faceless guy's coming towards him. And the father's in the elevator. And he's got an axe. And he tries to take out the evil faceless guy with an axe, which is epic. But it turns out it wasn't the evil faceless guy. No. Something's been messing with their heads. And he actually just took out the son's girlfriend. And it's a shocking twist. It's like, why did that need to be in there? Because you have to have something sad happen at some time to somebody. Sad things happen to the son. So they're in the elevator and they get out of the elevator because they need to figure out, while they're in the elevator, he's like, if we stay in here, she's going to kill us. They've decided that all of the evil things are happening because of the body, because of Jane Doe. If we stay in here, Jane Doe is going to kill us. If we get out of here and we go and we finish our job, maybe we can find something which allows us to fix this situation. So they get out of the elevator, they go into the smoke-filled room because the cremator door opened, spreading smoke everywhere, and things are happening, and they kind of get attacked, but then they get better, and the room clears out of smoke, and they're able to actually finish the autopsy with Jane Doe. So while the father takes a brain sample, the son is looking at the little piece of fabric, and he's twisting it around, the fabric that they found in her stomach, the one that had her tooth wrapped in it, almost like a ritual had taken place. Well, whenever he kind of aligns the fabric, I guess, in a specific way, he sees that it has a year, 1687 on it, and it has a Bible verse for Leviticus. Yeah, that Leviticus Bible verse is all about those who commune with the dead, or women who commune with the dead specifically, are witches, and they will have their own blood upon their hands. I don't know what that means, man, but it doesn't sound like you're going to be burning them at the stake to me. It sounds like you got to just leave them up to their own devices. I don't know. You know, it's that whole thing about take the splinter out of your eye before you point out the plank in your neighbors, and people hear that and just go ahead and say, oh, that means we can stab people in the face with wood, right? I don't think that's what that means at all, good sir, but you have already made an assumption and taken action on that assumption, so they burned her like a witch is what happened. And so they decide that basically because they treated her like a witch for so long, her body, the rituals of destroying the witch actually concreted her as a witch. It gave her the powers that everyone was trying to purge from her person. Kind of a cool theory. If you told me this was part of the M. Night Shyamalan universe, I'd 100% believe you. This actually probably should be part of the M. Night Shyamalan universe. She would fit in very well with the split personality person and the glass guy and the super strong dude. Like, yeah, 16th century witch. Oh, and the new one, because if you guys didn't know that Trap was setting up a new hero in the multiverse of Shyamalama Ding Dong is what we call him around here. Then we'll talk about Trap next, I'm sure. So, the father takes the brain sample and he looks at it under the microscope and he realizes the brain is still alive. She is still alive. That's why her body doesn't have wounds on it. When they check the fridge for all her internal organs, they are in an extreme stage of decomposition, almost as if her body was preserving them. She is still living. So the father leans over her and he asks her to spare his son, and can he help her? And that's when his wrists snap and his ankles snap and he starts experiencing what she experienced. Now, he is in extreme pain. And so he looks into his son's eyes and he says, please, please, please. And the son takes a scalpel and stabs him. It is at this point that I have a theory that if the son had not stabbed him, the son would have survived. Because we don't see what happens to the son. We just see that he thinks he hears somebody outside and he goes to him, but then nobody's outside and it's really the song that's playing again. And when he turns around, one of the bodies from the coolers is standing back up, and then he slips and he falls and he dies. Theoretically, because the sheriff then shows up, as does other individuals, and they're looking around the scene, and the wife says, oh, it looks like he took it, and he stops her and goes, I've known this family 20 years. Whatever it looks like, that's not it. And he keeps looking around, and one of the female officers comes over, I think it's a female detective, and says, what do we want to do with her, pointing to Jane Doe, and he goes, oh, should we take him over to the Brooksfield, funeral home? He goes, no, get it out of my county. I don't want this anywhere in my county. He's a very smart sheriff. And so they load up Jane Doe, and they load up all the rest of the bodies. Jane Doe is being driven away. Now, earlier in the film, the girlfriend wanted to see a body, and the son showed her one body and pulled it out, and it was a guy who died from a heart attack. And she goes, no, I didn't want to see that body. I pointed to this one. He goes, you don't want to see that one. She goes, yes, I do. So he rolled it back in, and the father says, it's okay, she can see it. So he pulls the body out, and then she reaches down to uncover his face, because this one's face is covered, because this is the individual with the strychnine in his system who, is missing the front, the human part of his head is gone. So she reaches down to, oh my God, that'd be so disturbing. Like, what if this part of your face could no longer hold on with its little, connectors to the bone part, and then the bone was just gone, but this part was like all loose? It's nightmare fuel. Enjoy that. So she goes to uncover the thing, and her boyfriend grabs her hand and is like, some things you can't unsee. You don't want to see that. She goes, yes, I do. And so she goes to reach for it, and the father flicks the bell on the thing's toe. And why does it have a bell on the toe? It's because the father tells her that whenever, they started the funeral parlor so many years ago, so many decades, because the father's third generation. So it probably goes back 70 or 80 years. They didn't have the technology to tell a person who was comatose apart from somebody who was dead. So if somebody came into the morgue, they would tie a bell around their toe. And if the bell sounded, that meant they were alive. And so this guy's old school, he ties a bell around everybody's toes. One bell, just because. And so because he did that, it stopped the girlfriend from looking at the, faceless guy's face, and probably stopped her from having horrific nightmares the rest of her life. And they closed the thing, and everybody's happy-go-lucky, honky-dory. back to the end of the film. They load up Jane Doe. The guy's in the car driving away. The radio starts turning stations. That's a hint that her magic's at work. But then the camera looks at her face, pans down her body, covered in plastic, and then stops at her feet, which are exposed for some reason. There's the bell. The last thing that happens is the big toe moves, and the bell goes ding, 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 ding. And she's alive. So he did help her. He did, in his own way, bring an end to her suffering. Although the real question is, did he just cause the suffering of so many more? That would be a really cool series to have another entry in. But sadly, they don't do that. Now, if you are at all interested in morgues or that entire, macabre subject, this is actually a really good, this is essentially an autopsy. And they do a realistic accounting of it. So if you have any interest in that kind of stuff, it's a very good movie. Like I said, it's a 2 out of 3, but I couldn't have predicted Witches in a million years. It's a chocolate chip cookie, but it's also something different. And we see that so rarely. So go check that out. Thank you so much for tuning in. I think that's it for me this evening. I messed up everybody's names so many times. I've got some ideas for the future coming along. Like and subscribe, all that jazz. Shout out to everybody in Yemen. And I'm also advertising in Iraq, Azerbaijan, India, Thailand. Hello, Çakbi Beşlik to my Turkish fans. If there are any Turkish fans out there, Çakbi Beşlik means 5 in the sky, I think. I was told to me by a German exchange student. What's up, Gozday? Okay, catch y'all later, and y'all have a wonderful day. Bye, y'all.